we're just saying, sadly, we don't have a minyan, at least yet. So we're going to do some kind of, a creative little mini davening, non-minyan davening, prayer together. And then we'll do some study. And we'll end with a creative mourner's Kaddish, it looks like, if this continues. Okay? So, just to get us into a space, maybe Rabbi Jane will give us a little kavana and a little breathing, maybe a little modani, something like this to get us started into a space, and then we'll go into the Shema Yisrael.
Modani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam shechazarta b'nishmati v'chemla
Thank you, God, for giving us a chance to be together, even on Zoom. A chance to be grateful for the Torah. A chance to be grateful for one another. Grateful for, please God, God's help and safety for all our brothers and sisters throughout the world, but certainly in the Israel and the territories who are suffering at this time. We pray for them, hold them in our hearts on the Shavuot. So we're going to turn now directly to a Shema Yisrael. And for those that have a talit with them, the custom is to take the four corners of your talit and gather them together as one. Symbol of the oneness of God. Some actually hold it over their eyes and cover their eyes with the oneness. And before we chant the Shema Yisrael, we're going to say the words El Melech Ne'eman, which means God, the sovereign, the holy sovereign, the loyal sovereign, the faithful one, El, faithful sovereign, faithful one. And those will add as a way when we don't have a minyan, but it adds a sense that God is with us, loyal to us, faithful to us, and we're faithful to God. At all times. So I invite you to place your hand, if you'd like, over your eyes. El Melech Ne'eman.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושננתם בניך ודיברת בם ושבתך בביתך ולכתך בדרך ושוכבך וקומך שרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפו בין עיניך, הותרת ביתך וישמרך.
Okay, look at this. Beth Meyer doesn't necessarily come on time, but they come. We're glad to welcome our new chevra here. We got the Sid Strauss here, we got Alan here, we got Rita, Chag Sameach, Good Yantif. We're doing a brief davening. If you'd like, if you have a Siddur in the red Siddur Sim Shalom, you can turn to page 159. You can find a link to the Siddur, I believe, on our Beth Meyer Facebook page, I believe. If not, I'm not sure exactly, easily, here it is, it's okay.
We'll it's on the Sanctuary live stream page.
There we go, thank you.
And it's the Shabbat and Festival.
Fair. So if you go on the live stream page, if you go to bethmeyer.org, you have Sanctuary live stream, you can click on that and see the Siddur. But I want to also encourage you to let go a little bit. Don't be don't feel constrained. We'll do creative davening here together. So we're going to begin on page 159 for our Amidah, special for festivals. Actually, is the Amidah for festival? I think it's actually on 306. Excuse me. Page 306 is the Amidah for festivals, the standing prayer. And the special insertion will be for Shavuot, the time of the giving of the Torah. And what Rabbi Jenny and I will do is that we'll invite you, if you're able, to rise, to face east. If you're not able to do so or don't know which way is east, that's no problem. Don't worry about it. You can face your computer. I know that Millie is like in Peru, to face east there as well. I know I'm sure you can find it where you're at, Millie. We'll begin the first few blessings together as a minyan, and the rest will done silently. And remember insertions for Shavuot. But really take your time to offer prayers on the Shavuot, this time of receiving the Torah. It's really receiving wisdom, of thanking God for giving us the Torah, but thanking us for giving us the chance to learn and study and implement and act on the Torah. And we know it says all the Torah's paths are peace. So we're really going to pray for peace too, that the Torah of peace should come within all of us. We should have a true Torah of peace that the whole world feels and understands, and with our brothers and sisters in Israel as well. So we rise together on page 206 who would like to do so or are able to do so. For the Amidah.
Adonai sefatai tida uviani devatecha Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elokei avotenu v'imotenu Elokei Abraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, Elokei Sarah, Elokei Rivka, Elokei Rachel, Elokei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor והנורא, אל עליון גומר חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גואלים לבניהם למען שמו ויאהבה. מלך עוזר ופוקד מושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיים איתי מטרף להושיע, מוריד אתה, מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיים מתים ברחמים רב. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו, משני עפר, מי כמוך בר גבורות, ומדום אליו, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני, לחיי המתים. אמן. נקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמרתי שמותו בשמי מרום, כך כתוב בנביאך, וקרא זה ואמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלך הארץ כבודו. אז בקורש גדול אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול, מנסים למצרפים לעומתם, ברוך יאמרו ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומך מלכנו תופיע, ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו לך. מתי תמלוך בציון, בקרוב ימינו לעולם ועד תשכון. תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך, לדור ודור נצח נצחים. ועינינו תראינה מלכותך, כדבר אמור בשירי עוזך, על ידי דוד משיח צדקך. ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלייך ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, נצח נצחים. קדשתך נקדיש, שכחך אלוהינו בינו ושלום ועד. כי המלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. Either continue silently or page 309 in your Siddur, which you can get off the website. Go to the Sanctuary live stream link or page, and there'll be a link for the Siddur. We're adding inserts for Shavuot. Continue silent.
We turn out to page 316. We're going to do a little taste of Hallel. In this challenging time, we still need to celebrate, be grateful. So we'll sing some of the melodies here. Many of you probably know them by heart and things, so don't feel you have to have the CD, but again, if you'd like it, you can get off the website, off the Sanctuary live stream, page 316. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu לקרוא את ההלל לבדם בצאת ישראל ממצרים בית יעקב מעם נוהם בצאת ישראל ממצרים בית יעקב מעם נוהם הייתה יהודה לקודשו ישראל ממשלותיו Hayam Ravi Anos, Hayadeh Disov Leachor, He'arim Rakedu Chelim, Gevaot Givnei Tzon, Betzed Yisrael, Mitzrayim, Med Yaakov, Me'am Loed, Betzed Yisrael, Mitzrayim, Med Yaakov, Me'am Loed, bottom 317. Adonai Zecharani V'Oed, Ye'ared Beit Yisrael, Ye'ared Beit Aharon, Ye'ared Adonai Agdanim Gedolim, Yosef Adonai Alechem, Alechem ve'avrechem, ve'ochim atem l'Adonai, oseh shamayim ba'af, השמיים שמיים לאדוני והארץ נתן לבני אדם, לא המתים יהללו, הללויה, ולא כל יורדי דום, אנחנו נבעיה, מעתה ועד עולם, מעתה ועד עולם, Hallelujah. Top page 319. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov. Olam hazo yomarna Yisrael. Yomruna ve'daron gele lahazo Yomruna yirei Adonai le'olam hasto 320 Pituli sha'et tzedek avovam odeya זה אשר לאדוני צדיקים יבואו עוד חגים הניתנים ועדי לישועה אבן מזועה בונים הייתה לראש פינה מאת אדוני הייתה זורי נפלא בין זה היום עשה אדוני
Nagila v'nizmecha bo.
We now offer prayers that God should save us and give us success. And truly we pray for our brothers and sisters who are struggling in Israel. And absolutely, those innocents caught in the crossfire, including innocent people, innocent Palestinians, children, who sadly are struggling and are scared as well. We hold our brothers and sisters close to us, but we pray, please God, a ceasefire comes soon. And please God, peace reigns throughout there and throughout our country, throughout the world. In every place, the Torah of peace is brought together with love and with joy and with deeper understanding one for the other. Ana Adonai Hoshiana. Ana Adonai Hoshiana. Ana Adonai Hatzlichana. Ana Adonai Hatzlichana. כי לך טוב להודות לשיר שמך נאה לזמר כי מעולם עד עולם אתה אל ברוך אתה אדוני מלך מהולל בתשבחו. Page 321. יתגדל ויקדש שמי רבה. ילמד יברך אותי מחמכותי בחייכו מכון נחלכו ישראל. רגליו בזמן קריבים יראו אמן. יש מרבה מבורך. עולמו המאמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר. דרומם יתנשא ויתהדר. מתלבט להשמיע לקודשה. בריחו לילה מקור ברכתה וישורתה. תושבתה ונחמתה. דמירם בימיו ימרו. יקבץ אותון ואותון לכל ישראל. כאן מעון ושמיים ימרו. יהי שלום רב מן שמיים וחיים, עליהם וכל ישראל ימרו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו וכל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל וימרו. Amen. So, Chavre, tradition this time, either today, actually more tomorrow, but just so you're aware, there's actually the chanting of the book of Ruth. So we've made recordings of the book of Ruth. So again, you don't have to worry about it today. You'll see it tomorrow as well. But Kathy did an amazing recording of some of our laners earlier, and that recording will be made available, and we'll let you know the link. If you go to Beth Meyer's YouTube page and you look for the book of Ruth, it should be up there as well on the YouTube site. But we are going to now enter our creative Torah service. And for our creative Torah service, we're actually going to learn some Torah together, shockingly. It is Shavuot, very appropriate to learn some Torah. So I'm going to pull this up. You can go to the Beth Meyer page on the calendar. Might be the easiest for you, but I will share a screen also, where you can go and you will see on the calendar for this morning's service, Shavuot morning, day 1, there'll be a little link saying for the Torah study text sheet, and you can connect to that. But I will also share a screen too, so we can get some learning together about Torah on this holiday of receiving the Torah. So as Rabbi Jen noted before, since it's hard to see the chat when we're also sharing our screen, so we're going to invite you just to unmute yourself as we participate. In fact, if you'd like to maybe just unmute yourself altogether at this time, you can feel free to do so. Okay, don't do that. Fine. Yeah. Just unmute yourself when it's time to talk, Jenny says. All right, fine. She's got more experience than me. So, and we're going to learn together. We say the blessing, La'asok b'divrei Torah, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Just want to say it's great to see some new faces just joined us. Steve Hamill in the house. We got Bonnie Leach in the house. Alan Blumberg in the bite. Great to see you all. Chag Sameach, Good Yantiv. Hope you have some cheesecake ready, okay? If you not lactose issues, okay? All right. We're going to say together, receiving Torah together. This is one of the famous psukim about receiving Torah from Exodus 19, which is the story where it comes down. So I invite Rabbi Jenny to read that pasuk, get involved here in some of the issues of the Hebrew, and we'll go with a little midrash interpretation from the Gemara on that.
All right. So here's the verse from Exodus. They journeyed from Rephidim, which was a place, came to the wilderness of Sinai, and encamped. And the Hebrew word here is in the plural, vayachanu. they encamped in the desert. And Yisrael, singular, Vayichan, encamped there in front of the mountain. So the initial koshi, difficulty that is raised that we're going to explore through a Talmudic text is this word encamped is used twice. And in the first instance in the verse, it's plural, they encamped. And then it goes on to say Yisrael to define the they, but is used in the singular, Vayichan. And because when we're looking at the text with rabbinic eyes, I don't mean that like professional rabbis, like all of us as Torah, as rabbis, as Torah scholars, we're paying attention to every letter. And so it seems strange, even in basic English, we would think that the verbs within one sentence would necessarily agree with one another, be in the same person. But in this case, there's a differential, and we're going to explore the meaning, potential meaning behind that shift from plural to singular.
Exactly. All right. So the question is, do you have any thoughts? Why? And I'm looking here at the Hebrew. Unfortunately, something happened with the Hebrew on our text here I'm sharing.
Oh,
so
yeah,
it got messed
weird
up somehow. I don't know why that is. But in any case, it's also in the Hebrew as well. Just you trust this. For those of you who are reading it, you'll see. Or you can look up Suk even online. You can see. So why would it be we're wandering to Sinai, we encamp at the mountain, plural, and then it says literally the next sentence, singular. Any thoughts about that koshi? You can unmute Yellen, Vakasha. Go ahead.
Well, it seems to me that until they got to Sinai and first camp, they were just this mob of people. So it was a lot of people.
Motley crew.
Yeah, that works. But then at Sinai, they became a nation, which is singular.
Okay.
So you had a group, plural, that becomes one nation.
Okay. So Ellen, I think it's very nice. Some people say when we left Egypt, we had that dynamic of just, but you could also say basically it's a continuing process that we're going through from Egypt to here. Even at Sinai, we're still a motley crew or a disparate group. And we're becoming more united at that moment of revelation. You fit. And it's a great answer. It's a classic rabbinic answer, by the way. I love it, Rabbi Edelman. Nice job. Shkoyach. Other thoughts about this, or about unity, or about singular and plural? Any other thoughts? I know you could say it's a scribal error, but that's makes it a little boring. Any other ideas of what this might be sermonically? Look at the chat. How would I know if the chat goes on? Yeah. Okay. People are stumped. Love that. Okay. Then we're gonna.
I think Ellen summed it all up like that. We went from many to Am Yisrael, like a plural noun, yes, but we use the singular grammatically along with that.
Yeah, you fit.
Sid.
Bakasha Sid.
But I think there could well be another element that the motley crew journeyed, but that each of us are supposed to receive the Torah individually.
Yeah, fit. That's like survey says answer number 2. Nice. I love that. You fit. So that we're a group receiving it, but it's like it's funny. Like some people, when rabbis give sermons, sometimes we give a sermon, we're thinking we want to get out there, and sometimes I feel like the people that I hope hear the sermon don't hear the sermon, and people that do hear the sermon don't need to hear the sermon. Okay, it's the same thing with children, by the way. It's like the one when you talk to the whole class, you're hoping there's one particular kid will hear. They don't hear it. It's the other kids that hear it. Okay, but yeah, I'm kind of joking. I'm kind of serious. It's like it's like. When you gave the 10 Commandments, did the people that needed to hear don't steal, did they hear it? Did they hear it? That's the question. So it's each individual has to take it into their neshama, into their heart, and feel it, not just as a group. Because it can feel like a group, it maybe doesn't touch you, right? The individual has to feel like they take ownership of it as well. It's a very nice answer, Sid. Okay. Any others? Deborah Vakasha.
Well, I was just thinking, kind of along with what Sid said, isn't that sort of the... I don't know, maybe it's tension is the thing about our responsibility with Torah, that we're responsible individually to follow the mitzvot, but we're also responsible as a collective. So our prayers on Yom Kippur, for example, are in the plural. We always talk about that and how weird that is. And but we're also asking for ourselves individually. So in a sense, that's maybe what this is saying, that it was received as a collective, but also as an individual at the same time.
Yes.
Wonderful,
Yeah,
wonderful.
that's another great answer. Yeshkoy. And I just wanted to say, for those of you who did the Jewish farming panel last night, one of the many things were shared. I think there's so much unpacked with that great panel. If you haven't done it, it's recorded. It was just so exciting to hear and phenomenal and great tour. But one of the things that Justin Goldstein, who is one of the leaders of an Asheville Jewish farm called Yesod Farm and Kitchen, when he introduced the farm, and this is now, I've heard this more commonly now, hearing it more often. He said this farm is located not in Asheville, on historically
Chautauqua.
Catawba and what was it on Catawba and
I don't remember.
there's another Native American Cherokee ancestral land. And you know, this is one of the powerful questions that our country is facing in recent times, but I mean it's really more in recent times, but we're like coming to consciousness more and maybe discussion more, is that, you know, my family came here in 1900. Quote unquote, individually, I could argue I'm not responsible for Native American dispersion, right? That's the argument of the individual, Vayichan. But collectively, this neighborhood right now, our shul is on Native American. And in fact, one of the things I'm interested in, this is a separate issue. I've been asking around for some help of what were the exact tribes. I would like to know where our shul and this North Raleigh area is. I'm curious, because there's so much of our Jewish communities in this North Raleigh area, although not only, but I want to get into that question. I think it's a really powerful question. What we have to do about it, reparation, that's a whole other question. But just knowing the history itself, the first step is just to know, just to get it. It's not easy to find out. It's not so simple. It's complicated. But so there's a collective responsibility, but there's also an individual responsibility, and trying to understand the dynamics between those. Even as an American, I have collective responsibility for things America did even before I even was born, or I came here, or my family came here, etc. And how do we manage that? Responsibility, by the way, doesn't mean there's an easy answer of what to do about it. That's another question. It's just being aware of that. And that's what I think Deborah said about the Torah. We are collectively responsible, even if some individuals don't practice it. Collectively, we have certain responsibilities to it. So how do we deal with that dynamic? It's a very powerful question. Very powerful. Fit. Other thoughts about collective versus individual, or? Okay, so no more stumping. All right, now we're going to look here at another take about collective versus individual when it comes to Torah learning. And I'll invite Rabbi Jenny again to the narrator.
Our rabbis taught a poor man, a rich man, and a lustful man are summoned before the heavenly tribunal. They ask the poor man, "Why didn't you involve yourself in Torah study?" If he says, "I was very poor and I was busy trying to earn a livelihood," they would say to him, "Were you poorer than Hillel?" The story is told about Hillel the elder, that he went to work every day and earned a tarpik, half of which he would give to the guard at the Beit Midrash, the hall of study, and the other half went for food for himself and his family. One day he did not earn anything. Since the guard at the Beit Midrash did not allow him to enter, he climbed up to the roof and sat on a skylight directly above the Beit Midrash to hear the words of the living God from the mouth of the teachers Shemaiah and Avtalion. Now that day was a Friday, and it was in the winter, and snow fell on him. At sunrise, Shemaiah said to Avtalion, "Brother Avtalion, every day this house is light, but today it is dark. Is it a cloudy day?" They looked up and saw the form of a man in the skylight. They went up and found him covered by 3 cubits of snow. After removing the snow, they bathed and anointed him and placed him in front of the fire.
Okay, now which implies, just to be clear, they brought him in the Beit Midrash to warm up, and then essentially goes on to say to then study Torah in the Beit Midrash. Okay. So let's hold for a second back the text about plural, singular. We'll get back to what Jenny, I think, is the connection here. Let's just start here for a second. In this text, on the pshat, basic level, it's a cute story about Hillel, right? Hillel is just, we take him as Hillel Shammai. Hillel was not a wealthy person. Hillel he had tarpik, which basically is like a kopeck. I don't know, we call it like in modern.
A penny.
A penny. It's like he not a lot of money, and he couldn't even afford it. And the only way, just to be clear, there's a guard at the Beit Midrash who stops people who haven't paid from going in to study Torah. And this is a place to study the best Torah, or basically to study Torah at all. Basically, in some ways, we're saying religious school, okay? Saying you're not allowed in if you can't afford it, and he can't. And the day he has his thing, he's up on the roof in the snow. I mean, it's kind of a cute thing, but it shows his commitment, right? It shows like he's really, really committed. He's willing to take his ear to the window, essentially. Okay.
He's also willing to endanger himself.
And endanger himself. And I think if we get into the motifs here, but the fact that he puts it over the skylight, I want us to hear what you. So, reactions from you. What do you think some of the morals here of the story are? And I want about Hillel, about Torah study, and I want to particularly get in the issue about who is led into the Beit Midrash and who's not led in the Beit Midrash. And what's the whole, and the Beit Midrash is the place where you study the Torah. So this whole dynamic about who gets to study, who doesn't get to study, how finances play with it, reactions, thoughts. What does you think the message is here? I see Bonnie, our assistant treasurer. What does she say?
I was just going to make a side comment that I noticed the citing is from Yoma 35, which was our DAF 2 days ago.
Oh, you're kidding. It was Daf Yomi? Oh my God. Right. You are doing Yoma right now. That's right. So was there a discussion in that context with the group? Or did you
we haven't discussed yet. We'll discuss on Wednesday night.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, that's so cool. The world's coming together in Torah. All right. Okay, cool. Other people think about Hillel or reactions. What do you think the messages are? Deborah, of course. Vakasha.
Well, I think it goes back a little bit to what you were talking about native land and responsibility. The issue is not, well, I mean, obviously it's that people were displaced, but the issue really is, it is an issue because it continues to be a problem, right? People continue to suffer for that displacement in the same way that we talk about like reparations for slavery. Well, nobody who's alive now was a slave. And none of us who are alive now were slave owners, but the social dynamic still favors one over the other. And I think that in the same way, this is saying that the door to advancement, because in their culture, the greatest advancement was to be a Torah scholar, that the door to advancement is closed to some people, or is very difficult for some people to get into for no particular reason except who they happen to be. I mean, in this case, Hillel is poor. It's not a racial issue, but maybe it was. I mean, maybe it was that as well.
Yes.
Or who they were born to, exactly. Their inherited status rather than their earned status. And in the end, I guess, you know, you could say that they kind of recognize that, and they afford Hillel a status to which he wasn't born because of his dedication. But it seems to me that the story is really on the same piece with that. You suffer for this. I don't know, you suffer for the sins of your ancestors, I guess is the best way to say it.
Are you born at home plate or you're born at third base? I mean, I think is very powerful. You're saying, Hillel's born at home
exactly.
plate.
Or even never get a chance, to come up to bat.
Exactly. A fair, Deborah. Kol hakavod. That's a very rich read of this. I love it. Does Ellen have a hand up? Ellen? No.
Well, I was just reminded, and I think it occurred later, Rabban Gamliel II, there was the huge fight.
That's right.
And he was kicked out of his position as the leader of the Sanhedrin or whatever it was. And he was one who believed that only limited people, certain people, if they were wealthy and highborn, those were the only ones who should come in and study. And when he was kicked out, I cannot remember the name of the rabbi who became the next head. Changed everything. So then when I think Gamliel came in the next day to study, not as the head, but just as one of the scholars, there were a whole slew of new benches. That's and right. Anybody and everybody could come in.
Famous Gemara. Yes, Ellen. Great memory.
Yeah, I mean, I love that story.
Yes.
Because it's so applicable even today where things are limited into who can come. And it oftentimes is, as Deborah said, who you're born to and how much money you have.
Right. I mean, it's also, I think it's a great story, Ellen Kolakova, great connection. I think it's a great about inclusive, because then, right, I mean, still it was only men
and still it was certain people that I guess would maybe have basic reading skills. I mean, I don't know enough about the details, but you had to have certain limited abilities. I assume you, right? Because it's actually an interesting question. Could you come in if you didn't have any type of literacy? I don't know, but it certainly was expanded. And then what if you were disabled? What if you couldn't travel far? What if there's a lot of like the issue of inclusion today. The conversation we're having today. We're just having today in 2021 is how do we get it is equity, real inclusion, really looking at the depths of inequality and how do we bring it together. But that text was, in a way, the beginning of that dynamic already then. What are we doing to stop people from coming in the door? Part of it is just not enough benches for them. Part of it's they don't have the money. Part of it, they don't have seats. We don't let them in. So it's like thinking deeply about how do we widen the doors of the Torah study hall? How do we make it as inclusive as possible, even to this day? Beautiful point. Shkoyach. All right,
Well,
Judith, what do you say?
Well, I'm thinking about this, how he blocked the light.
Yes, come, bring that.
So only when something unusual happened did they notice that there was this person there that really wanted to come in. So how extraordinarily he had to want to come in or want to get the learnings for them to let him in. So he had to do so much more than the people that had money in order to get in. And it took a lot for them to notice it.
Judith, I was thinking, just hearing you say that resonated for me. I was thinking of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, may she rest in peace. How much she had to do. I'm telling you all, no better. It was unbelievable what she did. Twice the work to basically get, and also have an amazing partner, by the way. Her husband was a remarkable man, in terms of his support for her. But it was a unique thing. But she had to work double and unique circumstances and all that stuff to be the essentially first or one of the first. But that had to be extraordinary. How many people were not, for various reasons, couldn't do that level of extraordinary, or didn't have the time or the energy or whatever? It's very unique. I also want to say it's powerful that the Beit Midrash doesn't have light in it. Like it's lacking some light because Hillel's not in it. It's
and that they claim to be studying Torah,
right?
Which we would assume is helping us grow in our connection to God and creating a world of enlightenment. And yet they are literally, the light has been diminished by virtue of their myopic view of what it is they're even engaged in. That they're not making it possible for those who want to learn to come in and learn. I read a great article this past week. I shared it with Steve, a couple other leaders. We're talking a lot about, because of this year and what this year has forced us to do to find ways to connect, with Zoom and everything else, we're talking a lot about access. Yeah. And even now, as we transition into some new kind of normal, a lot of the language that we've been using with each other is like, will it be in Zoom or in person? Well, we're going to have to figure out some kind of hybrid. And the article that I read recently, again, that I shared with others and that I encourage you all to read and to think about, encourages us to let go of that hybrid word, which is very binary, like Zoom or in person, and instead begin to think more expansively in terms of community and Torah study and prayer about multi-access. Everything being multi-access with multiple points of entry for all the kinds of things that we do. And I'm really moved by that. I think that one of the things that I want to take away from this year is just a lot of creativity. There are things that we've always done them a certain way. This year, quite uncomfortably, forced us to do them a little bit differently. And yet there are many blessings that have come from that. And what happens if we actually expand that even further, instead of kind of like circling the wagons and coming back to, no, we're going to do everything the way we used to do it before COVID, of saying, no, we can't. And not only can we not, there's so much to be gained by opening up points of entry. And I think this is like an ancient point of entry story. You know, we're only going to do it for the people who can afford to come in the building and have enough knowledge and whatever. You know, Hillel's basically like in Zoom, you know, mode. He's like, I'm going to put my ear to the window. Okay, that's another way. But what happens if we just open it wide? And of course, like all things, you know, we have to figure out how to do that safely. There have to be guardrails on all things to keep them safe and allow the Torah to flow. But it's an interesting thing to think about as we move forward. Bonnie.
I'll just say it's more than just access. What they're citing here is the want to put Torah study at the top. I mean, they criticize the poor man, but the very next verses, they criticize the rich man who says, I was so busy with all my wealth that I couldn't make time. So it's really, Torah study has to be first and central to all of this before.
The primacy of Torah study, and saying that no matter what your circumstance, you don't have an excuse. And we don't have an excuse to help meet you where you are.
Sure. Yeah. Other thoughts? Yeah,
Deborah.
Yeah, I just, when Bonnie was talking about the primacy of Torah study, I think that's really, I mean, that resonates for us because we're sitting here, we're studying Torah on a, you know, Monday morning when most of us were up half the night. But I think that to think of Torah study as the responsibility and connectedness that we have with each other and with God, and that's what Torah study is about. So when you say the Torah study is primary, what I think you're saying is that what is primary is for us to learn, acknowledge, be conscious of, and live in our responsibilities to each other and to creating a world that works for everybody. And it's not something in your head. I mean, it is, obviously, there's all these nuances and so on and so forth, but it's not esoteric. It's a way that you live your life, and not only, you know, whether you mix milk and meat or you know, carry logs on Shabbat, but an overall way in which you live your life. And that's what you're studying when you're studying Torah.
Yes, and what I hear in your words, Deborah, is, you know, that great teaching from Pirkei Avot, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, that the study, you know, is the question of, is Torah study greater or is mitzvot, pursuing action, greater? And it's saying, no, Talmud Torah leads to them all. It is not separate from. We don't study Torah just because it's intellectually animating and fun for our minds. No, it is, hopefully, and we know this even from neuroscience, our thoughts generate our, you know, actions, what we do out in the world, or it ought to anyway.
So I want to bring it back though to the original text about the singular and the plural, you know, and this is like where the sermon comes in. But what I would suggest, and I want to hear what you all think too, is that like one of the tensions around Torah learning from the beginning and from the Torah when it was given in the beginning is that, is it really available to all? Is everyone really of the people able to participate in it? You know, can we access it? This is the question. You know, look, even in our congregation, which is a private entity and we have to raise funds, you know, we do our best to engage and not like finance is an issue directly relevant to this text, but even in general, to invite people who have different backgrounds, different, all kinds of belief systems, styles, obviously skin color, whether you're a convert or not, I mean, whatever. We're trying to, where you live, the more we can make it, as Jenny said, accessible, multi-access, that kind of thinking is really, on some level, it's been from the beginning. When you have this Torah, we want it to go to the world. We want it to go out to everyone. But how do we actually get that in a way that is most equitable, fair, reasonable, affordable? This is a challenging question, not easy, but I feel it's in some ways from the beginning, from that text. It's like one of my reads on that text. Other thoughts about that, or maybe the connection, or what do you say about that connection? Yeah, Deb, what do you say?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to monopolize the conversation. I think that before you can answer that question, you have to answer another question, which is, what does access mean? What are you giving people access to? and what is it that you hope they'll get from that access? Because again, sitting in shul in services is important to a lot of us. I mean, probably most of us here on this call are regular shul goers, and we come and we get something out of that, and that's very meaningful for us. But we know that we have a whole congregation of people who, come on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur because they're supposed to, right? And they stand in the lobby most of the time, and they schmooze with their friends, which is lovely. I mean, that's important, but they're not davening. That's not what speaks to them. But they need access to Torah, however they experience that, just as much as those of us who sit in shul every Shabbat, and those of us who, daven every morning, or, however we experience that, those of us who keep kosher, those of us who don't, all those different things. So what does access really mean? And so what does access really mean? What are people getting access to? I guess that's the question. I mean, I used to do this exercise with my students, my fifth graders, many, many, many years ago, where I would ask them to sign in every Friday, every Sunday morning, and then write down some Jewish value that they had practiced during the week. And that was really hard for them. They were fifth graders, they were 10 years old. And I'd say, well, did you feed the dog? Well, yeah, I fed the dog. That's my job. That's a Jewish value, right? That's a mitzvah. Did you not argue with your mother once when she said, go make your bed? Yeah, I did that once, right? Okay, well, that's a Jewish value. Expanding that sense of access. So I think that's an equally important question.
I think it's a great point there. Very fair, very legitimate. I want to also just raise here that, when we arrived years ago and we started doing the Torah study in lieu of a sermon during Shavuot services, I mean, in general, this was one of the changes that didn't actually get much resistance, which is nice to see. But it's one of those things that I think that I treasure in our shul is that chance, and one of the things I miss, although we have been doing it actually, it's been awesome with the chat, with the Zoom, but is that piece where like people come, including people who are not Jewish, and people that don't come to shul regularly or whatever, or just guests, and of course the regulars, like a lot of you here in this experience, and you all we study together. It's awesome. Like that's study. It's not just like you're hearing what me or Jenny thinks, or even like what one of you thinks, which has its place. I'm not saying it's irrelevant. I mean, it has a place, but it's like a conversation, and like that's real Torah study. It's giving even access. Some people have never said the Talmud before. This is their one shot. Let's do it, or a new shot. Maybe get them inspired. Again, a lot of you on this call have done a lot of it. But in general, I find that really touching. Some people have come to me after saying, I never experienced it before actually studying a piece of Torah. I never heard who Rashi was. I didn't realize that I could do that too. I didn't even know it was in English. Today there's Sefaria, this unbelievable site that's like thousands of texts in English translation that are like, you could study Torah amazingly just online for free. It's a nonprofit, basically. It's amazing. It's like the Wikipedia of the Jewish Torah study. That's incredible access opportunity there. And the more people get access to it, the more people who can contribute to the conversation. I think that's what the last piece I want to say is that I think it's saying the Torah gets enriched by the more people that get a chance to interact with it and to give their thoughts and contribute to it. So our job is to try and get as more people as possible to get it connected to it. All right, any last comments here before we wrap up our study, which is so awesome in general? Okay, shkoyach. Tov. Kaddish, nachon. So we're going to continue. We're going to conclude now our experience here with the mourner's Kaddish. For those that have a Siddur, it's on page 207 in the traditional, red Siddur we've been using, Lev Shalem. Again, you can get off the website too. If you go to the Sanctuary live stream link, you can find our Siddur as there. Or obviously you can Google too. Just Google the mourner's Kaddish as well. And since we're a relatively small group here on Shavuot, I was thinking if people feel comfortable, if anyone here is reciting the mourner's Kaddish, if they would like to say who they're holding in their heart at this time, and maybe just their relationships to that person. So feel free if you'd like to unmute yourself and say who you're thinking of and holding your heart. We'd be honored to hear that. You also do not have to, or you also could put it in the chat if that is just more comfortable for you. Does Roberto would you like to say?
Yeah, from my dad and Sandra.
From my father.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who'd like to say who they're holding in their hearts this Shavuot? Yes, Steve's off. Go ahead, Judith. I'm sorry.
I'm saying Kaddish for my Uncle Mo, who I was with him when he passed away and for his last few days of life a few weeks ago.
Beautiful.
Sorry.
And I want to hear Steve Hamill put in the chat also that it's for his mother, his father, and brother Lee. May they rest in peace. Amen. So those who are in mourning or observing a yard site this Shavuot, I invite you to rise. Page 207. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divra kirute v'yamlich malchute. B'chayechon uvyomechon ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ומי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא. ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה ברכו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן ביעלמה יאמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל יאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל יאמרו אמן. Be seated, everyone. Good Yantif, everyone. Chag Sameach. It's we're still on Zoom, but it's Hamish should be together in a nice mitzvah to daven. Davening continues tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. again. This time we will have not only the usual davening, but Yisker and there's a video that Kathy's provided of the Book of Ruth that you can click on through the YouTube, Beth Meyer YouTube site. So we'll daven at 10 o'clock, do some Torah study. Oh, actually, a little Vort I'll be giving in Yisker. Wednesday night minyan, of course, as usual at 7, and then Sunday 7, Nachon, and Sunday at 9, Kabbat Shabbat at 8 o'clock, and Shabbat morning services, Bat Mitzvah of Zoe Neuwirth will be becoming the Bat Mitzvah this Shabbat, which will be wonderful. Look ahead also to on this Thursday, we have a couple important meetings coming up for our shul annual meetings at 7:30 on Thursday. There'll be an informational meeting. It's an opportunity for people to come and ask questions and learn about the budget and other important things, rabbi stuff, all kinds of things. Check it out. And then on June 7th, which is a Monday, coming a couple of weeks, will be official votes on all these things. Here's a conversation, learning, questions, whatever, like no voting per se. And then you can we'll be voting on those things at our annual meeting for the upcoming year. Very excited about the possibilities with the mask mandate changing. Hopefully our shul, I believe, fairly soon, we're making some changes. There's complexities. Not all children can get vaccinated. We're not there yet 100%. We're going to have to deal with this issue. I don't know about food yet. So there's a lot we're going to have to see how it's going to go. But God willing, we are going in an exciting new direction. So soon, please God, we will be gathering more and more people at the shul who are able to do so. Okay. Any other announcements or questions before we conclude? Rabbi Jane, did I miss anything?
Nope.
Okay, great. So we're going to end with Kiddush. The sweetness of a little juice. It's ironic. Right here, we're here on Shavuot in a beautiful North Carolina day and honoring the Torah. And there's a lot of challenge going on in Israel and Gaza and other places. Some of us have this red alert on our phones. It's surreal, but we're holding everyone in our heart. Please God, the sweetness of Shavuot and Torah should be inclusive of everyone. Please God. Savri. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי הגפן. L'chaim, everyone. Chag Sameach. We'll leave this open here if you wanted to unmute yourselves and do some schmoozing with each other and wish each other good Yantif, as if you were shul having cheesecake. These are usually the kiddushes that Amy would take care of in the past. I really love those kiddush. I miss them. Hope you're going to come back and do them with your soups and everything. I love that stuff. Usually are leftover cookies, a little ice cream once in a while. I get those Ben & Jerry's Klondike bars. I miss all that stuff, guys. Am I being obvious when I'm mentioning the list? So I miss you guys, but God willing, soon. So, L'chaim, a sweet Shavuos, and
See you soon.
unmute yourselves and schmooze.